this whole big spin. Now I'm on. Okay, I'll repeat everything. So good evening, everybody. Are we live now? So it's coming across now, do you know?
Let's see.
Oh, that's funny. So we had a little technical difficulty. Apparently Ahmad doesn't know which button to press to put us live. So welcome to everybody on Facebook. I'll just repeat everything I just said for the last 3 minutes. The next Monday night workshop will be June 5th. I don't know the topic yet. I'll probably go ahead and deliver or send out a newsletter this Friday. I'm sorry guys, you're going to hear this again. And then for those of you who are on Facebook right now, if you will send me messages and let me know whether or not you prefer email or Twitter, because I haven't set up the Twitter account yet, but it's something I'm working on, and if that makes it easier for you to get the information, I would appreciate that. And then I think that's all. Is that, yeah, that's fine. So now you're all up to date. Of course, this is our first Wednesday workshop that we have done in the history of Omega, so I'm grateful for that. Will you hit the door for me, please, Amon? Thank you. I forgot that was still open. People who are looking for divorces are going to come in. Come on in. Hello. Good evening. Welcome. Have a seat. So tonight's topic is on the idea of critical thinking. I'm not critical thinking, excuse me. Who's in control of my thinking? How many people know about the concept of critical thinking, by the way? Oh good, then you won't know if I mess this up bad. So, my first thoughts, what actually really got me thinking about our thinking process is the political arena that we've been stuck in for the last 2 years, who knows how long it's been, and how all the uprising and anger and fact-finding and blah, 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 and social media influence. So my thought was, if we can actually figure out who's in charge of our thinking, we'd probably be less emotional. For those of you who are familiar with the, IQ, everybody understands their IQ? Well, there's an EQ, that's the emotional intelligence. So our emotional intelligence actually affects our IQ. So if we're emotionally led, our IQ goes down, and if our IQ is led, our EQ goes down. So there's got to be an equilibrium or a balance there. And it seems like the EQ is a lot higher nowadays than the IQ. And that's affecting our thinking. So our thought is, or my thought was, how can I make it so that my thinking isn't influenced by everything outside of me, that I would actually be the one who's formulating my own thoughts? Now, of course, in the classroom, we mentioned that our thinking is based upon what we see and what we hear. So what I look out and see, I make an observation and I make my thoughts, oh, this is how that is. And then what I hear, oh, that's how that person acts, or that's what that person says. And we do this a lot. When we meet people that remind us of other people, even if I don't know them, I'm like, ooh, especially if they remind me of someone I don't like. And then somebody I do like, I naturally feel favor towards them. So I'm affected by my memory. Now my memory is actually connected to my thinking as well. Duh. Thought process, it's my memory. So, if I can go back to think about the earliest influences I had, like who formulated my thought process, naturally it would be my parents. They were the first 2 people that came into my life. Well, not in my instance, but our first 2 people. And their thought processes, their belief systems, the way they formulated things, the way they interacted, it influenced me. For those of you who are familiar with personality tests and stuff, there's one called the DISC, where there's 4 different types of behaviorals. There's a D for dominance, I for influence, S for stability, and C for correctness. And so the dominant people, those are the ones who are forceful, they're in your way, this is it, let's get it done, get it done, get it done. The I's are the socialites, they love to chit-chat. Pierre's not here, so I can pick on him. He's a total I. It's the person who has to tell you everything about everyone that they know and name drop all the time. The S's are the steadfast. Those are the ones who are really high on integrity. They're the compassionate ones. It's the best one of all of them. I'm an S. Just kidding. I am an ass, but it's not the best one. They're all good. But the S's are the one who has the integrity. They're the caring kind of people. And then the C's are correctness. Those are your engineers, your lawyers, the doctors. It's all mental. What I like to do is break it up into, if it's a football team, those of you who know football, love football. So the D's would be the coaches on the sidelines. shouting orders, telling people what to do. They see, quick, let's go, let's go. The I's are the cheerleaders. Yay, rah, rah, rah. And it doesn't have to be, unfortunately, when you say cheerleaders, a lot of people think the dimwit. A lot of cheerleaders are actually intelligent, but I mean like the guys on the sidelines hitting them, hey, good job. And then the S's. The S's would be the people like when there's an injury, they're the ones who run on the field, make sure everybody's got water and Gatorade and take care of everyone. That's your S. And then the C's, those are the people up in the booths with all the stats and the numbers, and they're looking through all the things, and they're the ones who are passing on the information to the coach to let them know what to do. All of them are necessary for a team to succeed. So in those behaviorals, those 4 behaviors, they're all necessary. Now, when it comes to our thinking process, so back up to me as a child, my dad's a D. So therefore, what kind of influence did I have? Get it done, get it done, get it done. That D, forceful, let's go, let's go. Now, D's are good. They're fire. They get things done. So my dad got a lot done, so get things done. My mom was, what would my mom be? I'd say she'd be a flip between a D and an S. Very, very compassionate. And again, I'm bipolar, so compassionate and dominant, I would say, both of those. So I grew up with force and a little compassion, but force, mostly force. And then the next set of people that influenced my thought process would be teachers. We go to elementary school. I loved my kindergarten teacher. To this day, she's still one of my favorite teachers. Sweet, beautiful, compassionate, loving woman, just charming. And so for her, the S, that was compassion. And she introduced me to education, a love of learning. Like, it doesn't have to be something forced on it. It was a love of learning. Oh, this is fun. It was a fun thing to do. Reading was fun. It took you to a place that didn't exist. I love that she introduced me to reading. So that thought process was put on me. So my first teacher was Mrs. McElgin, very first teacher as a kindergartner. I learned to love reading. Now, fast forward, 54 years old, I love reading, and I react strongly to forceful people, and I'm very caring of forceful individuals. So I have a negative reaction to that, mostly because I had a negative reaction for most of my childhood, so I made that connection. Force is negative, bad, run. So that's not correct. Now, I don't want to say correct, but it is a thought process. So the idea is, I read this one quote today. It said, there's 8 common thinking mistakes our brains make, and the first one is that we surround ourselves with information that matches our own beliefs. So essentially, I surround myself with people who think exactly like me. And then there was a little cartoon caption that said, it was these 2 teachers, and one of them said, did you read my thesis on it was confirmation bias, that's what it's called. Did you read my thing on confirmation bias? And the other man said, well, yes, I did. It's everything I already knew. But that's what we do with confirmation bias. We seek out people who are similar to what we think, and we gather together, and we talk about the same thing over and over. We feel supported. We feel validated. But that doesn't give us an expansion. It keeps us very limited. So when I go out and I look for people, and I find people that are just like me, so again, back to the political arena, and I don't want to be political, I want to look at behaviors here. So my behavior, or watching the behaviors, we have those who are haters, and, well, there's haters on both sides. So hate, 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 and no one's listening to each other anymore. It's just hate, 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 look what they did, and just back, it was a nightmare. I actually had to stop. I couldn't take it anymore. It was too, and it's still going on. It's still going on. Maybe this is my little plea for people to please stop. Find something else, please, something nice. Anyway, so by surrounding ourselves with people who are just like us, it never changes we don't get an opportunity to expand or grow. Now, we may not want to expand and grow. You might be happy with your thought process. That's great. Stay there. If you like it, that's great. But the expansion idea is what really captured my attention here. Let me just go back. So teachers, and then of course today, days and age, social media. That is the information outlet. So everybody's influenced by the social media. And I find it curious on how there's been some experiments where some false information was leaked to be true, and before you know it, everyone's quoting it as if it's true. That's how fast we get influenced. Do you remember the commercial a couple of years ago where this woman was meeting some guy on a blind date, and this really not very attractive man with long hair and goofy kind of walks up, and she said, "Oh, no, it said on the internet that he was a French model." And the guy just goes, oui. And she like walks away thinking that really... That's unfortunate that our minds can be melded so quickly by the social media or the internet, the things that we think are true. So, again, the social media is, and then of course the news outlets are another way that we get a lot of our information, and it melds us. I tease my husband all the time. I know you're watching. I tease my husband all the time. He watches Fox News. I call it the talking heads. And nobody's listening to each other. They're just, my opinion, my opinion, my opinion, my opinion. And I don't know if I wanted to plug Fox News or not, so I don't feel like plugging anybody else, so that's all I'll say. And then, of course, we have books. But, books, unfortunately, are things that are starting to fade in the past. Although, I'm kind of happy to see this in the business world. Books are starting to pick up. The line leaders or readers is starting to pick up, so there's book. That's why I've been doing book recommendations, which I haven't done the one for me yet. I did it on the Monday night workshop. The book that I picked this year was You Can Make Yourself Happy No Matter What, I think. Or five things for making yourself. I don't remember the exact title. I'll have to look at that again. But anyway, books are another way that we can influence ourselves. The thing that I like about books is because it's already written, and it's like history. So the history's already down. Where today everything's so fluid, it changes one to the next. So yesterday we say one thing, today we say another, and it's challenging. And then, so again, those are the influences that I have in my life. I mentioned my parents, but we also have family and friends. Our family and friends sometimes can be the greatest influence in our lives, especially our significant others. The significant others, the person that I share my life with, has the greatest effect on me. We have conversations, we may not agree, we may not like, but we have a little bit more leeway with our significant others. We don't really get upset, but I've seen families torn apart by arguments and upset and different points of view, which is quite sad. Just because somebody has a different point of view, you don't need to exile them. It's just a different point of view. So I like to have, like with me, there's certain topics I don't talk about with my family. I have a very liberal family. I don't talk to them about politics. I don't talk to them about religion. I just, whatever they want, that's fine. I always remain quiet. I let them assume anything that they want. Whatever they want to think of me. For years they thought I was one political party. I'm not. But I let them think that way. It's fine, because it's not worth it to me. It's not worth the upset. I'd rather just be there and enjoy them rather than their points of view. Because it's amazing how when you're challenged with a point of view that's opposing, we get so angry and defensive, and we get like we have to tell you you're wrong, which I don't understand that. Everyone should have a different point of view. And now this is just my thinking, my thought process. One of the other reasons why I decided to do something on the thinking process is because if we feel, or I'm aware, not everybody thinks like me. I'm totally aware of that. And I know we all know that not everybody thinks like us, but yet we still act like they should. And we're out to correct them. Here's the way that you should be thinking. This is what you ought to be doing. This is why I like the dynamic, the DISC assessment again, the 4 different. Once I recognize there's 4 quadrants, I don't have a need to change anybody. If you're a D, you're a D, that's great. If you're an S, that's fine. So whatever you are, it's my ability to adapt to them. That's actually part of the servient leaders, is where I'm in service to you, so I'm going to adapt to you, not force you to adapt to me. That's a very key, important point. That's a thought process. Not everybody thinks that way. So that's my first thought, was not everybody thinks like me. And if I can explain the way I think, would I be able to communicate it clearly so that you would understand? Not that I'm trying to change your thought process, but just to expand it or enhance it. Expansion is a word I actually like much better. So, why? Oh, fear is another thing. Sometimes my thoughts are influenced by fear. If I'm terrified about something, I can actually create. So I know you've all probably heard the stories of where you have fear, and the fear makes it worse than what really happened. So we build this fear, and we build the fear, and we build the fear, and the event actually wasn't that bad. But our fear or actually if we're coming up to the fear. So those of you who've ever gone skydiving, which I love skydiving, or anybody who's ever taken a risk, the building up to it is the panic and the sweat and the... But once you step out of that plane, the fear is gone. I mean, when you step into the risk, that's it. It just becomes a very liberating experience. If you haven't gone skydiving, I would really recommend it. I think it's a beautiful way to... People are like, why would you get out of a plane that's flying safely in the air? I'm like, oh, it was fun. I actually want to do the squirrel suit. Have you seen those? So you have the attachment to, and you open your, and it's like you have these little wings underneath, and you kind of fly. But I don't want to do it next to the mountains that I've seen people in the videos. I want to do it out in the sky so I don't crash into anything, and then just fly and land. Anyway, so anytime we take a risk, we actually expand ourselves. So the question I have is, what makes us so susceptible to other people and other thoughts? As we're living our lives, we start to formulate our thinking. Maria Montessori said that the first 3 years of our lives, it's an absorbent brain. So in other words, from 0 to 3, I'm waddling around, looking around, figuring things out, and just watching. No one's sitting here and telling me, this is a light switch, this is what you do. We all figured that out by exploration. Most babies put their toes in their mouth. They put everything in their mouth because that's how they feel things. So we learn by absorbing. So the first 3 years of our lives, we absorbed our environment. And that created part of our thinking. We absorb our environment. Mommy, that's the mommy lady. She's really nice. I cry and she gives me food. That's the daddy guy. He leaves and comes back. I don't know where he goes, but he comes and goes. So we start formulating pictures. Mom stays home. Dad goes to work. Now no one sits us down as a baby and says, here's how this works. We just absorbed it. So our brain had the ability to absorb our environment and then formulate thoughts of how it works. We figured out how to go up and down stairs. We figure out how to ride a bike. We figure out the terrible day when we go to school. We think it's going to be this fun little thing, and then 18 years later, we can't wait to get out. But we figure out about school. There's some classes we like and some that we don't. Some subjects we gravitate towards and some that we don't. All of that's all based on our experiences. By the time we get to, I think it's 9 years old, by the time we get to 9 years old, our personality is already solidified. Who we are at 9 is pretty much there. I think at 11 and 15, and please excuse me if I've got these ages wrong, there's just a little bit more tweaking, but by the time we reach our adolescence, like 18, 19, it's done. Our personality is already set. And usually when we hit those teenage years, that's when we're out experiencing life and, breaking rules and coming to finally, when we hit about the 20s, that's when we settle back down and we recognize, okay, this is the life that I want to live. Most kids do. Some continue on until they're 40 or 50. But for most of us, we settle down. So what makes us susceptible to other people's points of view? I found this really fascinating. Last year I read this article where it talked about how a lot of the teachers now in the upper class schools are making the required reading the books that they've written. So the teachers write the book and then it's part of the required curriculum. So you have to read their book and that's what they're teaching. And so Harvard, we could pick on not Harvard, but what's the one in California that's always got the argument, people are upset, they just had the big burning, and is it? Berkeley, thank you. Berkeley, one of the most liberal schools. Heads up to you. So they have teachers, there's teachers, and it's all new thought, so there's the, I don't want to be, anyway, I don't want to be specific.
It's an artistic school, so it's full of ego and
ego. You go in there. So here's my book, read it, and this is what we're going to learn. So a lot of kids are learning not history or critical thinking. They're learning what their teachers' thoughts are. So they walk out of school thinking what their teacher's thoughts are is truth, not recognizing that it's just the teacher's thoughts. That's amazing to me. These are Ivy League schools that we're producing what their teachers are thinking, rather than history, or rather than critical thinking and whatnot, which I'm going to get to in a moment about critical thinking. I found that fascinating, on how many schools now have the teachers' books as part of the curriculum. I find that very fascinating. And then I know that some of the books have been rewritten. Like I was looking through some of my son's books. when he was in elementary school, and how they rewrote some things so it doesn't sound so bad, like the World War II. You know, the Japanese didn't surrender; it was a peace treaty, and so like they tried to make it so it wasn't as bad, like the soft touch. The soft touch. This is around the time when what do we call this? Participation trophies. You get a participation trophy for showing up. Everybody plays a soccer game and, hey, everybody gets a trophy. Now, when I grew up, you got ribbons, and only the first place got a trophy. You got a ribbon if you played, and usually it was a first place, second place, third place, and then the actual winner of everything got the trophy. So only 3 people got ribbons, everyone else didn't, and then the victors got the trophy, and usually the whole team got a big trophy. But then the little thing, I don't know where this came from, but everyone gets a participation trophy. So we have a generation of children growing up thinking, I don't have to push past myself. I don't have to exceed anything. All I have to do is show up and I'm going to get rewarded. Think about this. That's what we've done. We've actually affected this generation, the millennials. I'll just show up and I get something. I'm here. That's how I'm here. I don't want to do that. That's too hard. So what we've actually done in our attempt to rescue them from a hard life, we've actually created children now who expect something for nothing. They expect to get this, snap their finger, come jump. That's what they expect. Now, with a lot of the clients that I work with, they complain about the millennials a great deal. And the thing is, you can't complain about the millennials. It's not their fault. It's their parents' fault. Their parents are the one who did that and raised this generation. Because remember, my thoughts are based upon what I see and what I hear. And if my parents are telling me, all I have to do is show up and I'm valuable and I'm greater than everyone and all I need is just my presence. Now, I understand you want to build confidence. I totally get that. But by taking away any form of obstacle or resistance, we actually weaken them. So now, let me clearly say this. That's my thought process. That may not be yours, but that's how I think. So, is my thought process greater or worse than the millennial thought process? That's impressive to think about. Maybe the millennial process is the correct way to go, and I'm just an old school person, and I'm going to be a dinosaur one day, and that generation will take, I don't know. But the question I just asked, like which was better or worse, that's critical thinking. So that's the idea I wanted to introduce us to. The things that make us susceptible to other people's thinking is when we have a weak mind. A weak mind is when we have never been trained how to think for ourselves. I can't tell you how many times I've had clients in my office upset because their boss said to them, well, tell me what you want to do. Well, no, you're supposed to tell me what to do. Like they are incapable of actually thinking for themselves. They need someone else to tell them what to do. That's a little scary to me. Like, what if the lights go out all of a sudden and there's no electricity? What are you going to do? Like, do you know how to cook? Can you make a fire? Or will you wait for someone to tell you what to do? Like, are you going to stand in the dark and wait for someone to tell you, okay, someone please go open the door or something? So that's a little scary to me, but we have a weak mind. Another thing that makes us susceptible to other people's thoughts process is when we're insecure, when we lack confidence. That's from a lack of experience. Now, anyone will tell you this. If you've ever learned how to ride a bike, the first time you're on the bike, you're doing this thing, right? And, well, even if you have the training wheels on, you're really scared. And when they finally take the training wheels off, you don't want your mom or dad to let go. You're hang on. And then when they finally let go, you might fall once or twice, but eventually we develop stability. We develop balance. I think that's a great illustration to our thinking. We might struggle a little bit, but if we do that enough and are challenged enough, we actually will develop a strong mind and a balance between my EQ and my IQ. So I'll have a nice balance by that. That, to me, I think would be worth it. So how do I challenge my mind? The way I challenge my mind is to confront myself with ideas that are outside of my thinking. Now, I've been doing this for a while now, ever since I've been in Omega, so 27 years. I have delved into every religion that's been on this planet. I've looked into every philosophy, Socrates, Plato, Confucius, Lao Tse, Quetzalcoatl, Akhenaten, you name them, I've looked into it. I've tried to read as many books as I can on those, so I've read bits of the Quran. I've read bits of the Bible, the New Testament, the Old Testament. I've read the Torah. I've read the Zola. So I've tried to read the Gospels according to the Gnostic Gospels, and then I've read the, there's so many, but I have these little wisdom books that are like the main books of every foundation. And what I've discovered, though the practices are quite different, like Kabbalah is quite different than Muslim, or the yogis, like they're all different. Although they're different practices, if you go all the way down the mainframe, it's the same. Love, compassion, truth, integrity. Basically, it's the same. They might say it differently, but it's all the same. I find that curious. I would have never discovered that had I not gone from one to the other and really opened myself to not thinking that there's one right way. Because I do remember at a very early age, in my 20s, how is it possible that there's only one religion and everyone else is wrong? I don't understand that. It's just like when one person says they're right and everybody else is wrong. It's impossible. You can't be right, the only right person all the time. I mean, I even know I'm wrong once or twice. And to know that you're wrong and admit that you're wrong, that's the great thing. It's funny how when you're wrong, I'll actually be confronting somebody and they've done something and, no, well, that's not, and they turn it around on me. Well, who do you think you are to point that out? Well, I'm here to help you. But they don't want to know, so they know they're wrong, but they're going to argue for being wrong. It's very funny. So anyway, the critical thought process is me to challenge myself. So I've done that in the religion aspect, in philosophy. I've challenged myself to see all different types of philosophy and different teachers, from Francis Bacon, oh gosh, now my mind's going to go blank. I know these names. Aristotle, thank you. Francis Bacon, Aristotle, Plato, Socrates, all those different, but they're from the Greek, and then there's the Asian culture as well that is filtered down. So by reading all of that, you educate yourself. Now, expanding your thinking. We do a little bit this in, like at schools, when we teach a little bit of math, a little bit of English, a little bit of social studies, a little bit of history. We teach that, or history is a social studies now, I think. Anyway, we teach different things for us to have a flavor like science, to see whether or not we like them. And then when we get to college, that's when we really focus in on the career path or the thing that we want. But having that little buffet, that's what it's like a buffet. When you go to a buffet, if you've ever been to a buffet, you can watch people. Even though they've got like 50 items, they'll always go for the same thing. I am guilty of it too. This big buffet, and I will always go to the same thing. I used to eat at Super Salad. I would always go for the salad, the spinach, the almonds, and I had and that was it. It was like 7 items, and that's it, every time I went. Why am I going to a buffet, paying 3 times as much, when I'm only going to eat the same thing all the time? So then I started venturing out and eating different foods. Some of them I liked, and some of them I did not. There were some meals I did not eat and just put it off to the side, and then some meals I thought, oh wow, I never actually thought about that, and I enjoyed it. And so that's also a good challenge to, when you go to restaurants, don't order the same meal all the time. Try something different. Now, I'm such a picky eater as a vegan. I'm a very picky eater, so I don't want to do something that I don't want to try. But I've done it occasionally. I'll try something. But I know there's some things I'm not going to eat. I'm not eating pork. I'm not eating meat. I'm not eating a duck. I'm not eating a duck. And there's certain vegetables I know I don't like. Brussels sprouts, you can keep them. Thank you very much. Cauliflower, it looks like scared broccoli. It's scared white broccoli. So I won't eat that. Obviously, that was a judgment. Sorry. So there's certain things I know I will not, because I've tried them. But if I don't try them, I won't know whether or not I like them. So just because I'm saying to have an open mind doesn't mean you're going to accept everything. There's preferences. Naturally, we have certain preferences. So back to the thought of critical thinking. This was quite funny. So I am not an individual. Some of you have heard me say this before. I'm very get me quick to this. I want the answer quickly. I don't want to have big details. And my husband is a very big detail man. As a matter of fact, Mark will laugh at this one. The other day, we were talking about Napoleon and the French Revolution. And I asked, what was the French Revolution? And I know Napoleon, but what was the French Revolution about? And which side was Napoleon on? And I'm not kidding you. He opened his mouth and said, back in ancient Greece, and started talking about Greece. And then he went to Egypt, and then he went into Russia, and then he finally back down to France 30 minutes later. So here's France now, and then he, and why the... And I looked at him and I said, so Napoleon? But he's the factual man. It's all about facts and information. I'm not. Now, does that make it invalid? Of course not. The place for facts exists. We balance each other out quite nicely because I don't care about the facts and he does, so, just give them to him. And he's very funny. He looks at me and he'll go, I lost you, haven't I? Because I get the deer in the headlight look. I'm just like, are you done? Love you, but seriously? And then I'm the one where I would just do a yes or no. I don't give any detail. It's like yes or no. And then if that doesn't satisfy you, I'll try to give you a little bit more. But I'm like the quick little answer, let's go, move on. So critical thinking, the reason why I brought this up, because this is for Mark. So the definition, in 1987, this was defined of the idea of critical thinking. And I quote, critical thinking is the intellectually disciplined process of actively and skillfully conceptualizing, applying, analyzing, synthesizing, and/or evaluating information gathered from or generated by observation, experience, reflection, reasoning, communication as a guide to belief and action. I hope you understood that, Mark. Now, I did not. So I went to a different definition that was a lot easier. Critical thinking is self-guided, self-disciplined thinking which attempts to reason at the highest level of quality in a fair-minded way. That makes a little bit more sense. And then I found one a little bit easier. So the idea, critical thinking, is to challenge your thinking. That's what critical thinking is, to challenge your thinking. To challenge, is that correct? I don't have to say, is this right or wrong, because that's all based on prejudice. Right or wrong is prejudice. Fact or fiction, again, that can be manipulated, as we've seen. So I challenge my thinking. George always used to have this idea that if we wanted to see if something was true for us, we thought about it, and if we were in agreement with it, we traveled down to our heart, and if our heart felt good about it, then it was true for us. And just because it's true for me may not mean it's true for you. I know I've done this illustration before, so I'll do it now. So those of you who are there, you can't see my eyes. You only see the back of my head, my nice straight hair today, the back of my sweater, my big old J-Lo butt, and that's it. You can't see my eyes. You can't see what earrings I have on. You don't see my face. You just see the back of me. But does the front of me exist? It does. So if somebody was standing in front of me here, they would have an entirely different picture of me. Now, if I had one person here looking at me this way and another person here looking at me this way, who would be right? But they wouldn't see the other person's point of view. So they would argue on which would be right. That's where we get stuck. So critical thinking is the way to say, okay, well, let me step into your shoes and see what you're looking at, or let me step into your shoes and see what you're looking at. That's critical thinking, to challenge what I believe to be true. Because remember, what I believe to be true is only what I've absorbed ever since I was a little kid. So truth is so fluid. My truth is quite different than your truth. It's very fluid. So for me to expand my thinking, I have to take the opposite point of view. We used to use the illustration of a person who's colorblind. So I can shout until I'm blue in the face. The colorblind person wouldn't see it because they don't see blue. So we can argue about a color, we'll never agree. And then we finally have to, that's where the sentence comes out, agree to disagree. That's where we have that. We have that agree to disagree. So critical thinking is designed for me to challenge my thought process. To look and say, all right, if this is what I believe, is that really true for me now? Now, here's the interesting thing. As we get older, our thoughts change. So as a child, I hated vegetables. Hated vegetables. The broccoli, I didn't want to eat the trees. That was just this, asparagus, too stringy. I always used to just think it was like vegetable string cheese because it was just gross. And of course the cauliflower and stuff. As I got older, I'm a vegan now. My favorite food is roasted vegetables. I mean, how bland can that be? But that's my favorite. Grill them, you're good to go. Anything, I'm good, except for cauliflower and Brussels sprouts. Although, I did eat Brussels sprouts. Denise made me Brussels sprouts one time on the grill, and it was actually good. But I'm too lazy to try it, and I don't want to do that again. So challenging my thinking. So as I said, as a child, I disliked vegetables immensely. Today as an adult, I've matured and changed. I've tasted and tried things, learned about a little bit of seasoning, things that I like and dislike, and now I like vegetables. So if the same is true for my taste, then it has to be for my thinking. As a child, I thought Santa Claus was real. I was told Santa Claus was real. We had Uncle Don show up with a beard and it was Santa Claus. So as a child, I thought Santa Claus was real. As an adult, I know Santa Claus is not. Now, the theory of Santa Claus might be real. The idea of giving gifts and being benevolent and kind, that may be real. The history of St. Nick, where there may have been an individual who did go out and give presents to people, may be real. But there is no such fat man that goes down a chimney and shows up bearing gifts, and all you have to do is pay him milk and cookies. That doesn't exist. So that's a thought process that has changed. Now, if we think about this, we actually can cause a little bit of injury to our children because we present them with lies. The Easter bunny, a bunny that lays chocolate eggs. Okay, yeah, that's good. Or hard-boiled eggs. Rabbits do that, really. The tooth fairy, which, by the way, now, do you know how much a tooth costs now? $5 a tooth. Are you kidding me? I got 25 cents, a nickel. I think I got a nickel. And then my kids got 25 cents. It's up to $5 a tooth.
It depends what school your children go to.
I hope so, yeah. I heard $5. I'm like, are you insane? I'll give you $1 maybe.
It's 20.
It's 20? Get out of here. I'm going to say Scottsdale then. Yeah, $20 a tooth is insane. That's insane. What are we doing to our kids there? Yank your tooth out for 20 bucks. Hey, I need money. Here, wait. Let's go to the movies. Wait. Okay, anyway, so the idea of critical thinking, remembering what I want to do is create not having a weak mind. How do we determine whether or not our mind is weak? Well, we have to ask ourselves some critical thinking question. What's a weak mind? Are you easily influenced by others? Can you be easily influenced by the news or by social media? Can you read something and do you immediately jump to, yes, that's it? Or are you able to go to the other side and say, well, let me see. If you are easily influenced, you have a weak mind. If you have the inability to actually grasp what the other side is saying, you have a weak mind. You're gravitated towards one position. Now, when I say weak mind, I don't mean you're not strong thinking. I mean that you have a limited mind. It's not expansive. It's single-focused and limited in any viewpoint. And that's why I'm calling it weak. A strong mind, I think of Einstein. When I think of minds, I think of Einstein, Stephen Hawking, individuals who really went above and beyond outside thinking, outside the box thinking. Einstein, one of his famous quotes was, imagination is more important than knowledge. And I think that's fantastic. Imagination, meaning I go out and think anything, create anything. That's more important than the actual knowledge. Those of you who know The Big Bang Theory, love that show. It's a sitcom. It's nothing but theorists. They're physicists, and they sit and think. That's their living. They sit and think. I think that would be great, That would be great, that I think outside the box. Now, some of us don't, as I said, we're not trained to do that. We weren't provided with the education to learn how to think outside the box. We were taught, A, B, C, and that's it. Here's the language, here's the instructions, math, this is what you do. Not to say that that's wrong, because geometry, numbers is probably one of the oldest educational systems that we have. Math is, music is all based on math as well. So that as a foundation, but to grow from that would be the thought process, to grow from that. So critical thinking, to determine first if I have a weak mind, and if I do have a weak mind, then I have to challenge myself. So challenging ourselves. I was thinking about brainwashing. Now, you may or may not know people who are brainwashed, and those of us who are old enough to remember, they used to call Omega a cult. George was the, devil, and we were a cult. And people were going to come and rescue us. And I know that there were some people who actually had interventions to get them to stop coming to Omega, because we're a cult. I'm the grand poobah now. So that was a thought process that eventually has worked its way down now that there's so many more seminars out there and familiar with what we do. But the idea of a cult still exists. Cults still exist. I did a research a few months ago, And it amazed me to believe or understand, you will be surprised at this, the Ku Klux Klan still exists. The Ku Klux Klan still exists.
Big gun.
They still exist, and it's big. And you know, it's the white brotherhood now. A lot of that has changed into skinheads and stuff. They recruit kids at a very early age, especially in the South. You know, guns, let's go shooting and whatnot, and then recruit them into the clubhouse. And I was blown away that and ideology as children, they're taught that those are incorrect people, these are the correct people, and it's dumbfounding. And the thing that really got me was they connect themselves to the Nazis. Like they revamped Nazis. The idea that there's a generation or a pure breed race and we're the only race and everyone else should be eliminated. That, I'm just blown away by that. It still exists. 2017, and we still have that. And so that's a form of a cult where you actually can begin. Now why? Because they take young minds that are still learning and exploring, and they feed information. Then I thought of, remember Jim Jones? That gentleman who drank the Kool-Aid, you know the line, don't drink the Kool-Aid. Jim Jones was a self-proclaimed prophet, and he had formed his own church. And when the government kind of came to shut him down, they went down to another country. I think, where was it?
Ghana.
Ghana, thank you. It was South Africa somewhere? Is that
West Africa.
Central America?
West Africa. That's Guinea then.
Guinea, Ghana. It was somewhere, I think it was Central America, I don't remember where. And he took his group down there, and then he had another group somewhere located up in San Francisco. And then he decided, you know, we need to cleanse ourselves and free ourselves of this planet. So cyanide. Everybody drank Kool-Aid that had cyanide. And then I did some further research on this, and this blew me away. So not everybody drank the cyanide at the same time. Everybody drank their cyanide, and then there were soldiers that went by, and if you were not dead, they shot you. So there were people, when they found them in the compound, there were children that were shot because the parents laid themselves on top of the kids and drank the cyanide to try to protect the children. And then the kids were discovered they were alive, so they were killed. There were some people to pretend to drink the cyanide, and they laid there pretending they were dead. They got shot. So it was amazing. And then after they shot people, then they drank their cyanide. Why? Because their minds were molded that this is what we need to do. Halley's Comet, remember when the Halley's Comet came a few years ago? There was a bunch of people in California that committed suicide because they were going to ride the tail of the comet. That's what they believed. Their souls were going to gump up and jump on it. Who knows? They might be doing it. I don't know. But they're gone. It was like 40 of them. So that's a good a good point of how we can be influenced. So just because you're older doesn't mean your mind is equivalent. Like sometimes we have adult bodies, but children at the controls. Again, one of my favorite movies by Pixar, Inside Out, with the voices at the control and running the person's life. Sometimes I think that's what happens. We have children at the controls. So my mind isn't fully developed. Now, how do we develop our mind? Critical thinking, that's one thing. Looking to find the opposite of what we think. Challenging our thought process. The second thing is finding the value in the opposite points of view. So to look at an opposite point of view and actually find value. Not to condone it, but I find value. We talk about this in Omega as well. Finding value in something I disagree with. So that I no longer disagree with it. I can say I recognize it exists. It's not something I want to do, but it exists. Instead of having the judgment to it. Or the So that strengthens my mind. Again, going back to Einstein and Stephen Hawking's, that what they do is they think outside their box, think outside of what normal thought process is. Any invention that has come about is by somebody who thought outside the box. We fly today because the Wright brothers dreamed of flying. So we all fly today. We drive cars today because Henry Ford thought of a combustible engine and let us go without horse and buggy. We can just, and that's why that's called horsepower inside the engine. It replaces the horse. So horsepower is how many horses it would take to run that engine, which is kind of interesting to do that. So every invention that we have, and then of course my natural all-time favorite, Bill Gates. Bill Gates, who dropped out of college. I read his commencement speech today. He did a commencement, and I don't recall what college he was at. But in his commencement speech, he said, knowledge doesn't just mean education, and he learned that along the way. Knowledge, just because Just because you can learn facts and figures doesn't make you a great leader. It doesn't make you a good boss. You have to have a group of people involved and influences. And he said Melinda, his wife, is one of his greatest influences. But the idea that when he dropped out of college, it was at the brink of the information age, and him and, oh, the name escapes me. His number one partner.
Yeah.
They started Microsoft. They said, we're going to miss the
Paul
age.
Allen?
Paul?
Paul
I think it was Paul. Paul Allen?
Paul Allen?
Yeah. They said they're going to miss the information age, so they dropped out of college so they could start and get involved. And look what that man did. Changed the world. And, as many of you have heard me say this, Bill Gates, I think, will probably go down, not for the man who changed the world because of technology, but from philanthropy. I mean, that man has given so much, more than I think anybody, if you did the statistics. So I think, overall, he'll be noted for the greatest philanthropist on the planet. Is that a good word? Philanthropist? Philanthropy? Philanthropist, thank you. I just expanded my vocabulary. I had a weak mind there. That's another thing that we can do to help increase our mind, is increase our vocabulary. I love the idea of the dictionary. I get it all the time, the word of the day. And by using that, it helps expand my thinking. The slang, back when I was growing up, oh, they had a word for it when you did slang. Ebonics?
Ebonics.
Ebonics.
No, Ebonics is what the black people talk.
Yes.
Is that's what they...
Yes, yes. And you don't say black, we say African American.
Yes. Sorry.
African American. Yeah, so, but it would be their slang. And so Ebonics was what, I don't think it's popular anymore. Now it's just rap. It's the rappers that do that. But thinking outside the box, then we could also think of, you remember Vanilla Ice? One of the first white rappers. He was a white man that was a rapper. One of the first ones came out. And then, of course, now there's so many white rappers that are out there. It's amazing. And I love that there's African-American countrymen now. You would never think an African-American would sing a country song, but there's African-Americans who are singing country. I'm waiting for the Chinese. I think that would be great, a Chinese country person. Although I do know that they have, I believe one of the people who's on the Supreme Court is a Jewish Japanese woman, or Chinese. She's Chinese. There's a commercial, I don't remember the commercial, but she's out there. She's Orient. I don't remember country. And she goes, so, you never saw a Jewish judge or a Jewish Japanese, or something like that. She did like that. It was very funny. So I like the cross-culture section. So that, again, is thinking outside the box. So when I think about our responsibility then, what is our responsibility for our thinking? Are we responsible for our own thinking? Yes, naturally. Are we responsible for how other people think? No. Am I responsible for you to hear what my thoughts are? No. This is hard. All of us feel like we have a right to speak, and you have to hear me. No. I don't need to listen to you if I don't want to. My favorite button on the remote is the off. When the talking heads are on, mute. The mute button, I like that one too. I don't know anybody, the fact that I have to listen to you. Your voice, if I ask, then absolutely. But if I don't ask, that's just rude. And that's what I see. Again, my thought process here. The idea that everyone's yelling at what their point of view is and getting angry because you're not agreeing with them, and then no one's listening anymore, so we have chaos. Chaos is a result. Now, chaos also happens inside our brains. When I don't have clear thinking, I have chaos. And when there's chaos inside, what happens to us? When we're involved in a chaotic situation, stress increases, panic increases, frustration increases, and eventually it gets violent. When there's chaos, when there's a chaotic situation. That can happen in my brain. If I have chaos in my brain, stress is going to increase, I'm going to get frustrated, I'll start to forget things, lose my focus, and I might start getting violent. I'll start having violent thoughts. I actually did a little research on this. Daydreaming. They say that in the workplace, I think it's 30 to 40% of the time we daydream. 30 to 40% of the time at work, we're daydreaming. And then the topics that we daydream about, the number one topic that people daydream about is something heroic. They are a hero. They've rescued people from a fire, or they've rescued people from a car accident. They think of themselves as the hero, the person with the solution. That's the number one. The number one thing, seeing themselves as a hero. The number two is finances, money. If they won the lottery, what would they do? Where are they going to spend their money? Who are they going to give it to? They're already billing it out, budgeting it out. So that's the second thing. The third thing that they think about is correcting situations. Something that's already happened, and they're going to correct it. Well, I should have said this, and they relive it in their mind and replay it over and over and say this. No, they should say that. And they like play all the parts too. So if I'm in an argument or disagreement with Ahmad and JT, oh, well, Ahmad should say this, and JT said that, and then and so we actually go into a whole. It's like a play all inside our head, all the little voices, and that's why we're called schizophrenic, with all the little voices that are going on in our head. But that's the third thing, that we actually are reliving an event and correcting it the way we want it to go, rather than the way it actually unfolded. Now, is this a waste of time? Not really. Only if we have the judgment to it. But to try and look at things from different perspectives, that actually is the idea of critical thinking. So again, if I say Ahmad and JT, instead of me saying Ahmad should have said this, I could, in critical thinking, go, well, if I was Ahmad, how would I think? And actually flip it around. And if I was in JT's position, how would I think? And flip it around. So that would be productive. It would not be productive to tell them how they should be thinking. That's not productive. So that wouldn't be critical thinking. So that's part of my expansion, is to learn to be critical thinking, and then to develop my mind so that it's strong. So as I said, the things that I would recommend for developing my mind, the first thing would be to challenge my thoughts, challenge my thinking. Not to believe that what my thoughts are real or true. It's my truth. So challenge my thinking. The second thing would be to find the value in others, find the value in other people's points of view, to go out and find the value of other people's point of view. And the third one, which is an easy one, is the vocabulary, increasing my vocabulary. I know it sounds a bit odd to increase my vocabulary would actually strengthen my brain, but it does, because vocabulary is connected to the word is syntax, I think. So vibrations, and the higher the vibration words, those are actually in my brain. So by adding larger vibrations in my vocabulary, it actually increases the vibrations of my thoughts. How's that sound? That sounded very authoritative, doesn't it? I'm speculating. I'm only speculating. I think that if I increase my vocabulary, it increases my energy, my vibration, which therefore will increase my thought process to expanding, the idea of wanting to expand and embrace. So those are the few things that I have about when it comes to who's in charge of my thinking and the idea of critical thinking. I did come across a book there. I'm not going to make this as a recommendation yet. I want to look at it. But one of the websites that I came across, they said there's a book called The Art of Thinking Clearly. That sounded quite nice, and a lot of the things that I looked at came up of that art, of that book. And the last thing that I wanted to add in a quick moment here, I wanted to add that, remember I said the 8 common mistakes our brains make? So I want to kind of end on that, the idea of our 8 common mistakes. So number 1, as I said, we surround ourselves with information that matches our beliefs already. And that's called confirmation bias. So I find people who agree with me, and then I feel all good. The second mistake I make is, it's called we believe in the swimmer's body. So that's an illusion. And it means we confuse talent with effort and training. So somebody who's naturally gifted, like Michael Jordan, let's say, or Michael Phelps, we say, well, if I work hard, I'll be just like him. Well, it's actually impossible because he has a swimmer's body. His arms are actually longer than his height, which technically from fingertip to fingertip, it should be the same height as I am from head to toe. But his arms are, I think, 4 inches longer than his actual body. So he's got a bigger breadth. And then he's got a longer trunk and shorter legs. So we confuse talent, natural talent, with effort. Number 3, we worry about things that we've already lost. And that means not just lost money, but lost time and effort. Oh, I put so much into this, I can't believe I'm not going to, and we'll spend time. How come it didn't come out the way I wanted to? I did this and I did that. And we talk about the things we've lost rather than, okay, that didn't work out, now let's move on. Number 4, we incorrectly predict odds. And this is funny, lotteries tonight, there's 204 million. For those of you who have won, I haven't bought a ticket yet, don't, because I'm going to win. But the odd, we incorrectly, I haven't won, and the last 4 scratchers I haven't won, so this one I'm going to win now. So if you've ever gone gambling and you see people at the table, oh, I've lost the 4-10 rounds, but so it's time for me to win now. Like they justify it and then they just keep losing. Number 5, we rationalize purchases that we don't want. You know, buyer's remorse. So we rationalize the purchases. Although I really do need all the shoes I buy, so okay, I'm not rationalizing that. But we can rationalize, oh, I didn't really need to get this. But you know what, I need it and I liked it and I convinced myself it's okay to buy that. We shouldn't do that. Just you make the choice, you're done. There's no need to continue to rationalize it. Number 6, we make decisions based upon the anchoring effect. So if everyone else is doing it, I'm going to do it. It's an anchor. Number 7, we believe our memories more than facts. This is happening a lot more the older I get. The memory that I have, no, this is how it really was, even though the fact is in front of me. And number 8, we pay more attention to stereotypes than we think. We actually do pay attention to the stereotypes more than we think. Let me go back for a second. The anchoring effect, excuse me, that's more like advertising too. You know, oh, the advertisers believe that if we take this product, I'm going to lose weight. If we all eat ginkgo biloba, everyone's going to be smart. Yeah, like that's the anchoring effect. It's the advertising. And then, of course, paying more attention to the stereotypes than we think. Even though we say we don't, we do. So those are the 8 mistakes that we make. And then, of course, I already gave you the list of things to do to help increase and strengthen our minds. So we're at 8 o'clock right now. Thank you, everyone, for joining us online. Thank you, everyone, for showing up tonight for our first Wednesday workshop. I'm very grateful for that. I'll see you in 2 weeks. And again, please remember, email me or comment if you like Twitter or email better. Same thing with you guys if you like Twitter or email better. So thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you, everyone here. Have a good night. I hope your thought process tonight was educational.